So, hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Chatter. Today I am delighted to be joined by Jemma Forte, co-host of the Trawl. Gemma, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
No problem. As I mentioned before we started, I have had your co-host on the show before, Marina, and we talked a lot about Brexit and Keir Starmer and the Tories, and I'm sure we'll probably end up having some very similar conversations this afternoon. So, well, maybe we just start with you, actually. So, like, when did you first start getting into politics, or when did you even think about doing the podcast with Marina?
Oh, where to start? So, I am somebody who has ended up talking about politics, and I became engaged, like so many people, radicalized, if you like, by listening to James O'Brien, and I just was really against Brexit. And prior to that, I had a vague interest, but I'm a bit older than Marina, and I count myself as so lucky to have been young in London, and then Tony Blair came in 1997, and all seemed pretty good time to be alive, to be honest with you. And then when Cameron came in, even, it was like, oh, okay, but it didn't seem to be a huge disaster, like it wasn't going to tangibly affect my life. And then Brexit happened, and suddenly it was like a big wake-up call. It was like, this decision is huge, and I just didn't believe the motivations of the people who were calling for it, selling it, if you like. So that's when my interest peaked, and I was already doing, my background is I was a kids presenter, I did Disney and stuff like that, wrote books, had kids, all the rest of it, and was always been sort of jobbing telly person, really. And then, long story short, had a massive argument on The Right Stuff, which was a show with Matthew Wright with Anne Widdecombe. And that kind of sort of came from nowhere. And then after that, sort of started getting booked specifically to talk about Brexit. And I guess the whole argument was so tribal, and I was very firmly in the Remain camp, if you like. So I guess I became a good pundit. So it wasn't by design. And then I was following Marina on Twitter. She followed me back. We sort of really liked each other's vibe. She then was invited to go on a show that I've been doing for ages called Jeremy Vine. And I reached out and just said, look, you know, if you probably don't need any, but I've been doing this sort of stuff for a while. And a friendship was formed. And it was a bit like falling in love, like all the best friendships, you know, where you're just like, this person's amazing. And we were like, oh, I really want to see you again. You know, it's just brilliant. And we're still sort of in that bubble. We really like each other. And so we put in as many social things as we possibly can. We speak every day, and we're incredibly like-minded. There's not much we don't agree on, apart from she doesn't like going on walks. That's one thing. Yeah.
What do you mean she doesn't like going on walks?
Just like, I'm going to go and do some hiking soon. She's like, you don't get that? Like, where are you walking to? And I'm like, you're just walking for the sake of it. She's like, nah. But, you know, these are things that are fine. We can work through these things. No, but politically, we're so aligned. And so we do this podcast, which we decided to do, had no idea whether it would hit the spot or not, you know, and it kind of has. And it's a beautiful thing because, in fact, somebody said to me the other day, somebody in TV said, it shouldn't work because you agree and you just make each other laugh. And I was like, no, you've just got used to everything being really polarized. If you've got a like-minded audience, it works.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, yeah, there's nothing wrong with two people who think the same, have fun, and people enjoying that. That seems pretty reasonable, no?
Well, also, the joy of it is it's not about us. We go through social media, we trawl through and look at the clips and play the clips and what people are saying about it. And people can be very, very funny. But of course, it allows us to talk about Sunak, immigration, like all the beefy politics as well, the Richard Sharp scandal. So it's sort of a mixture of serious and funny.
Yeah. I mean, I enjoy it. It's good. I mean, I don't agree with everything you guys have to say, but then, I mean, that's the game, isn't it? Really? But yeah, so I mean, one of the things that I know I wanted to talk to you about, maybe just start with this because it's really been irritating me. And I talked to Marina about this, and like the case the thing that we argued about was whether Labour were any better than the Tories, like whether there was really a genuine difference between the two of them. And I was basically making the case that I don't think voting for either of them will produce better or worse results in the next 10 years. I think it's basically a uni party where they're going to present basically the same policies. And even if Labour make some gains in or, you know, move forward with things that I think will genuinely help the country. I'm concerned that what will happen is they will do a really bad job of it, and in 4 or 5 years' time, we'll just get the Tories back. And any small minor gains that may have been made, like in a positive direction, will just be immediately erased.
So what would your preference be?
My preference would be a new party that doesn't take corporate money and wants to do what its members want. That is what I would like to see. Not politics driven by the money from the top, but driven by the memberships. That's what I would prefer.
Sort of utopia that doesn't exist.
Oh, it doesn't. I don't like. People may have horrible, awful ideas. I'm sure they do. But my problem is that that every decision in politics that is made now, none of it, in my view, is for the benefit of like the country. Like, there's no one going, this is a difficult decision, but we have to do the right thing. Can you imagine that conversation happening with any of the current crop of major politicians?
It wasn't that long ago that did happen on both sides. We have had gangsters in since Johnson, and I genuinely...
I would argue that you can go the whole way back to Thatcher, and we've had one party since then.
But with so much light and shade, and within that, with good decisions being made at times that genuinely were for the greater good, and other things, that were utterly corrupt. But nothing has been as corrupt as this since Johnson. And you're right, the most self-serving man on the planet. And Sunak, all the stuff that's coming out in the Times, how his wife and his father-in-law are benefiting from all these government grants. I mean, he's like a pirate. He's the worst. He's awful, as bad. But okay, so I'd imagine as well, when you had Marina on, it was some time ago, and I think
I think she had more of a case back then.
Yes, I was going to say, I agree. I think that Starmer is increasingly frustrating, and I know a lot of people, it's a bit of a trope, say Tory light. However, nothing in my mind could be as bad as this current lot. I think it's really sad that Labour have purged all the socialists, basically. I think that I don't really thoroughly trust them on the NHS. I don't. But I don't think they'd be lining their friends' pockets with silver. I do not think there'd be contracts going to their mate for millions to get faulty PPE. Tens of millions with no consequence. I hope with all my heart, and also I would vote tactically at this stage. People also ask myself and Marina, would you not want to be an MP? And for me, no. Who would I stand for? I don't have any real passion for the Labour Party right now. Actually, if anything, if there was proportional representation, probably the Greens. Caroline Lucas was running things. We'd probably be okay. I
think she at least seems to care.
Oh, she's great. She's amazing. And I think it's so important within our frustration and the anger of which I feel, very viscerally, that we also have to remember that there are some decent people in there really trying their bloody hardest. And whether it's in the Lib Dems or whether it's in the Labour Party, there are some good people, Greens, not many of them. And even the odd Conservative. Marina and I went to the House of Lords the other day, absolutely bizarre. We were invited by a Green peer called Jenny Jones. It was very thrilling, and she introduced us to all these people, and there was this one doddery old Tory, and a sort of, you slightly out of prejudice sort of written him off. And then I found out that he had been put in the Lords because he had made it that you have disabled access in black cabs in London.
Wow,
yeah,
really?
Right? And I got a bit of a shiver because I thought, okay, well, good for you. That's more useful than anything I've done. That's amazing. I have a friend who has a disabled child. That would have transformed her life. And I think that's been spread out nationally as well now, that those black cabs in cities have disabled access. Yeah. So I was like, okay, you can stay, and I am an eternal optimist. And I try and cling on to these things, or I see Jenny Jones, doing her thing. And she said, sometimes it is hard because I'm not getting anywhere. And I was like, yeah, but if you weren't here, you're one good person down.
Yeah.
So would it be different under Labour? Yes, it wouldn't be as bad.
Yeah, but I mean, so my issue is that and I wrote about this a lot in my first book, go buy it, Brexit, the Establishment Civil War, that I feel that we've had this neoliberalism party for the last 40 years.
Yeah.
And that involves privatization of public services, deregulation, tax cuts for the rich.
Yeah.
Right? And that is essentially the model that Keir Starmer is coming in now to offer up.
Yeah.
And that, to me, is like, that is those three like broad policies are the result, or sorry, they're the cause of so many of the problems that we are seeing today. Even the NHS, just the NHS by itself. You see, if we hadn't dealt with like Blair starting to farm out like the construction of loads of hospitals and stuff to PFI contracts, they've cost us hundreds of billions. And that's not an irrelevant number. And then like you can go through to like the way Keir Starmer's like, we need some private services to help deliver NHS services. And it's like, fuck you, man. Yeah. Like you're getting the worst of both worlds. And I think the only consequence of that is going to be things get worse. The service that we're provided for the cost that we are paying will get worse. Yeah. And eventually enough people will throw their hands up and go, oh, fuck it, just privatize it. That's my fear.
Well, the NHS is a particular something that I feel so upset about. I mean, this current treatment of nurses, of junior doctors. I think the sum of nurses who have left since strikes began is 15,000. We have 15,000 nurses fewer than we were before the strike started. They are just being insulted by Steve Barclay. Now, what's interesting to me is, yes, I have so much with Starmer. I don't want to bang his head against the wall. It's violent, but, frustration. If I was in a room with him, I'd be like, why aren't you letting your MPs go to picket lines? Why aren't you speaking for working people? You are Labour. Why are you allowing privatisation? There's so many things. Why did you let the public order bill go through? They didn't really fight that either. But they're not in power. And so I almost have only so much capacity, right? So I'm trying to hold the people who are in power. They are in power. They are the ones I have to hold to account right now. They cannot be in power any longer. And so then who's going to come in? Well, ultimately it's going to be Labour, isn't it? And then you start holding them to account. And you then have to hope with all your bloody goddamn heart that they are privy to some data that we don't have, right? They must do. And they're beating this shitty drum to try not to alienate I don't know who and sectors of the electorate, because it is working. Because the polls, I mean, although it's slightly, and we're nowhere near an election yet, so it is a worry.
Yeah, what are the what's the poll of polls sitting at the minute? Let's have a look.
But the other thing that is frustrating is that people like John McDonnell or whatever, are in there just going, what has happened to my party? But then the other issue I have is, am I feeling like this because I'm on Twitter every day and I'm being paid to go on things to talk about politics, and me and Marina are doing a little, so we're in this like little obsessed microcosm with everybody like shouting about stuff on Twitter, and then the majority of people, like I go to the hairdressers, been going to the same hairdressers for years, and the young girl washes my hair, she doesn't even know the difference between Labour and Conservative, like no idea. And so Starmer, are you playing a game? Are you going to get in and turn back into a good person? Because he seemed like a good person back in the day. He
seemed like he might, but then this is my other problem. Is like he's U-turned on absolutely
everything. And everything. The tuition fees.
Right up to the tuition. It's like, right, 2 days before a fucking local election. Are you kidding me?
Are you mad?
Where is the political strategy here?
Are you mad?
They said Jeremy Corbyn's Labour were incompetent. Like, they would have never been this stupid.
Yeah. I agree. But we actually bumped into John McDonnell, and said exactly that. We were like, what are they doing? And he went, I don't know. He said, I don't know. The timing is horrendous. And we said, what's the rationale? What is the reason? Like, we said, please tell us there's some rationale. And he said, well, the rationale is that they're preparing for government, that when they get in, there wouldn't be the money to do that. So they're obviously planning on spending it on something else. I said,
but that is the exact bullshit fallacy. I'm sorry. That's the exact bullshit fallacy that was sold to us about austerity. And that is my other fucking problem. They are using the exact language of the Tories from 2010. Oh, well, there's no money. And it's like, there can't have been no money for 15 years.
Yeah, well, no, I said you've got to tell us then what you are going to spend it on, because you're going to have to spend something. And also, but again, they're not in. And I do find it slightly, I don't know, is it unhelpful just for everybody to give up in the opposition when we've got these absolute villains? And Suella Braverman as Home Secretary, no thanks. Jacob Rees-Mogg there, like these horrendous individuals. We've got to get them out first. First and foremost, get them out. And then, you know, the country is broken. It's broken.
Yeah.
And it's going to be years and years and years of healing. And I'm also coming at this as a mum. My poor kids, bloody hell, they've had the rough end of it. You know, I've got 18-year-old and 16-year-old. So they did the pandemic during their teenage years. They've had a Gove-influenced education, which has just been shit, frankly, you know, doing A-levels and having to memorize quotes to back up anything that you write. I mean, they're so stressed. It's horrible. And then, you know, they've got this rhetoric coming from grown-ups, if you like, of like, yeah, look, you know, we've really messed it up. You guys are going to go and fix it, or you're going to go and sort it out because you guys are amazing. You care about the planet. I'm very careful not to do that. That's too much for their heads. They're like, so I'm stressed. I've got all this social media shit to deal with. You're telling me I'm never going to be able to move out till I'm about 40. You know, my friend wants to be a doctor and she can't because they haven't got enough training places. Mm-hmm. And then you're saying we've got to fix everything.
And we don't have enough doctors. Which, that's just one of the...
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean...
So I have
tell them not to worry about the climate. That's the beyond them, right? At this point, I think if you fix the system, that's where I would want to focus on. But yeah, so you're looking up at this. We're gonna.
Interesting.
So this is what the national polls are saying.
Good.
So what have we got? We've got Labour 46-ish, 47, 48.
Wow.
Something like that. So, I mean, I was looking at the poll of polls, and the Labour poll lead has been consistently in the mid 20s over the past 4 months. So, I mean, I think what's going to happen is Keir Starmer is going to end up winning, and I think his slogan for the next election should be "I am not the Tories."
I know.
I think they should rename the Labour Party to "Not the Tories," because that's the best way to win. Because I do think you're right. Like, as much as I get hyperbolic about how horrendous the Labour Party are as an opposition, the Tories cannot remain in government. They have betrayed all of their own principles. Fiscal responsibility, protection of human rights, free speech, you know, all of these things that they're meant to stand for. The family, all these things they're meant to fucking stand for. And then at the same time, they've treated the British government as a tool to enrich themselves. And that is the worst form of Americanization that I've ever seen in our politics.
It's been a bank raid.
Yeah.
It's been a bank raid. Mm-hmm. There's that figure about the 177 billionaires in the UK are getting richer by 250 million a day.
Yeah.
While, as we know, nurses can't afford to feed their families. And then on top of all that, you've got a coronation. I mean, it's just bonkers.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know.
And then they just rush through the protest bill. So if you so much as boo, I mean, where do we live?
That's disgusting. That is the least British. And do you know what really annoyed me? Is the lack of opposition to that.
Yes, agree.
Especially from the left.
Yeah, agree.
And people, because sometimes I say, you know, I used to be a big Labour Party supporter, loved Jeremy Corbyn, still do, to be fair. But I say to people often, it's I feel betrayed by the left. I've been left politically homeless because they've abandoned the principles for which they are meant to stand. Mm-hmm. And that is one of them, the right to protest. And just
I fundamentally agree, and I am finding it harder and harder and harder to say to people, if Labour is going to be fine. I've got massive reservations about that. I know they'll be better than them. I know that with all my heart. But yes, I also feel really frustrated by how they've alienated the true left, if you like. But I also
the treatment of Jeremy Corbyn.
Yeah,
like, the man got 40% of the vote, right? He's not like an unpopular figure, and their decision to just kick him out of the party.
I know.
It's like, how much damage do you think he can really do in the backbenches?
I agree. And actually, I think that Keir Starmer had done enough to show that he was stamping out the anti-Semitism, which he absolutely had to do. He'd done enough. He didn't then need to get it. And then, of course, the Diane Abbott stuff the other day. I mean, that was just, he must have been like, oh, brilliant, right, bye-bye. Yeah. But listen, again, they're not in yet. And sometimes the left do eat themselves. And again, I'm like, well, is that helpful if we just end up with the Tories again? I never want to be that person that goes, I'd have to leave, because I've said this to Marina before. I'm not going to leave. No. In reality, I don't speak any languages. I wouldn't have anywhere to go. My kids need to be near their dad. All my friends are here. I don't have any transferable skills. So I'm not going anywhere. But if the Conservatives get in, I'm also probably not going to get out of bed for about a week, because I can't bear it anymore. I cannot bear it. And interesting that someone like my dad, right, who's always been a sort of Labour or Lib Dem, very socially liberal, like a really decent person, and he's 72 or 3 or something, and then within his friendship group, he definitely has some sort of conservative friends, but right now it's become, if you're supporting this lot, that's where it's different. So he's still, some of his Conservatives friends might be Conservatives with a small c, the kind that wouldn't be allowed in the Tory party now. They'd have been got rid of, right? But he's looking at Labour going, and he's very engaged, but he's not looking at the nitty gritty like you and I are, like real policy, or what they did in PMQs, or what they did and he's looking at them going, they all look like normal human beings, like they sound pretty sensible. Lisa Nandu, yep, she's great. Rachel Reeves, yep, she sounds fine. Because he's basically saying they're not going, hello, like Jacob Rees-Mogg, like these panto villains, And so the one thing I know is that where it must be tough is trying to navigate how many people they've got to talk to in very strange, fractured Britain. And I do think they've got a hell of a lot of it wrong. There's a hell of a lot of it that makes me want to smash my head against the wall with despair. And there's a lot of it I fundamentally disagree with. But there's just this thing in me where I just want to give them the benefit of the doubt, and I might be crying, and then I might be doing the Trawl with Marina, calling out Labour for the next 5 years.
I hope so.
Yeah, well, we will, of course, and we do now, like when we disagree with them. But our focus is on the Tories, because they're the ones pillaging.
Yeah, well, no, they are the ones pillaging. Like I can't disagree with that. It's just, as I keep saying, I don't.
What if they get in? What if Starmer gets in and eases up and goes a bit more left because he can?
I don't buy that that's a thing. Like, Britain is really from polling and my understanding, like the British public is like socially quite conservative broadly outside of like London, basically, and economically like quite liberal, like in that they're some of the most popular proposed policies like that have been polled by YouGov and stuff like that is nationalisation, complete riddance of all privatisation in the NHS, fucking 80-90%. Rail, water, electricity, public transport.
Water privatised, it's insane.
Neoliberalism. And that is the thing that I do not want more of. And this is like, people would say I sound like a broken record. And maybe I do. But I'm fine to be that person, because like I am too aware of what that school of thought has done to this country and to many other countries around the world.
Yeah.
And I despair at the idea that after 40 years of that, after how we saw it deal with the pandemic in like, just farming out contracts to the nearest person who said they could provide a mask. 10 grand here, 20 billion there. They're just throwing money out like it was nothing, because it wasn't their money. Disgusting. It was state-sponsored privatization. So it's just like, we are paying the bill for the privatization. And if they had made massive profits, they get it. If they failed, we foot the bill. And it failed and we foot the bill.
Yeah.
We're at like 100% GDP to debt ratio. It's like £1 trillion of debt that we're now sitting on top of.
And again, when Labour were in and they put that note, the bloody chairman always bloody shows on Twitter, Greg Hands, he's so boring about it. But I think it was like 800 billion and now it's 2.5 trillion.
Yeah.
So screw you, Tories. You're shit with the economy.
Yeah.
You are fiscally irresponsible.
Yeah, sorry, not 1 trillion they've added, 1.7 trillion.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's eye-watering and it's
disgusting.
It's absolutely disgusting. So
but
just
these are the policies. This is what I will keep saying. These are the policies that we will get with another Labour government.
What about if also, which I would be an advocate for, like I kind of hope that they don't get a massive majority Labour because I want PR ultimately. So I'm like, come on, you Lib Demers, come on, let's get a few more green seats. I really do. I think it would be so much better ultimately, and then I might even think about going into politics.
But it's like I'm gonna check this now. But I'm pretty sure it's like 80% of Labour members are in favour of proportional representation, and Keir Starmer won't put it on the ballot.
I know.
That is like, and one of the things that Jeremy Corbyn did through his tenure of the Labour Party was to give the membership more power over policy. And Keir Starmer has stripped that all away. So like, if you're not representing the people who are going to go out and canvass for you, like who are you representing? Like what are you there for? The people who are paying? The memberships to the party?
You know what? I did meet a very prominent Labour MP at something, and I'm not going to say who, but I was asking all of these questions, and she just went, "Let us get in. Let us get in."
Yeah.
And she was just like, "Shut
I
up! We've got to get in. That's our job."
I don't buy that. That's a blank check. I don't like blank checks.
Well, yeah, but this is why I'm saying, let's see, because we don't have this Scandinavian alternative. We don't. There isn't another wonderful new party with an amazing leader who's offering something
No, but
different.
we have time
We're
to
stuck with what
find
we've
it.
got.
Like if enough people were to come, like turn around and be like, look, we, the people, there's like no one's going to step up. It's time for me to step up. And there's a few parties that I've seen like this starting to like, rear their heads. And I think it needs someone to stand up and go, enough is enough.
We just need Labour with a decent leader.
No, but I think but they proved that they won't do that. Like, look at the way they treated Jeremy Corbyn. Look at the Forge report that came out. Look at all of the leaks that showed that they literally sabotaged him from within his own party. Like, the BBC did a fucking special about it. What's her name? Halima Khan was one of the whistleblowers she brought out. They just sabotaged him from within.
It was the press as well.
Yeah, it was the press. Of course it was.
Yeah.
But they were undermining him from within.
But that's the country that we live in.
No, but that's not the party we have to have.
No, it isn't. But I've got friends exactly. You'd be like in a room, like, and you'd be so like-minded. People that I really, really like, but we argue about this all the time because I'm just like a bit more practical. It's like, well, yeah, you want this thing that doesn't exist. It just doesn't. We are where we are. We've got to work with that.
But we have time to create it. It's not like new political parties haven't sprung up.
We don't have time.
We do. How long have we got? We've got a year.
Jeez, I'm knackered. I'm nearly 50. I've got 2 kids. I don't have like 10 minutes, mate. I'm running my life, my house, my children, their A-levels, their GCSEs. I ain't got time for that.
Well, I've got time personally.
Yeah, exactly. So where is this coming from? I see so much apathy. I just think sort of get a change and then you go. So I have so many friends who are campaigning and are really active and are really engaged, and they're all banging from the and they really are doing something about it. So they've been doing this huge campaign to show people how they can vote tactically in the local elections and doing this and doing that. And it's been expensive and it's been big and it's been time consuming. And they are all wanting to get the Tories out. That's number one objective. Get whatever we get and then work from within to create better.
I do get that, right? Don't get me wrong. I understand the pragmatic argument. And I understand not wanting to have the Tories again. Like, I don't want them. Like, and they're devoid of talent. They've stripped through anyone with a modicum of sensibility.
Gavin Williamson was Education Secretary at one point.
It's not that. Suella Braverman, just what a joke. Before she even did the fucking stupid Rwanda thing.
These people.
Matt Hancock, how is he still even mentioned in government? The fuck went into the jungle, right? And got paid it was like 500 grand, $500,000, something. I'll Google that in a second.
And Steve Barclay not even meeting the nurses to, not engage. Like, they are despicable. So we were agreed on that. And then it's like, where you go from here. Also, the other thing is sometimes I feel sort of totally impotent, like everybody else. You just go, I'm just one person. Like, this is shit. And I miss, which, yes, Tony Blair, etc., Thatcher, like all of it, of course, all the neoliberalism that we've lived through, but like now it's on acid. But at the same time, because you're a product of your own upbringing, I remember when, even with elements of that, Tony Blair and Gordon Brown, pre-fucking disaster of Iraq, Sure Start centres, they were putting loads of teachers in, they put loads of, the satisfaction levels of the NHS were off the scale in 2010, they were exceptional. Globally, we were regarded as having the best healthcare system in the world. Everybody has always looked, funnily enough, at the BBC output as creatively, the dramas, the sport, the kind of the creative aspect of living in Britain has always been so highly regarded. You could get a job, you could save up and you could get a deposit on a flat. You could be 20 and save up for a couple of years and get a deposit. Okay,
but I will say on that is like the economic policy that Gordon Brown oversaw that led to the 2007 crash is the exact same policy that now means no. I will not take this as an excuse. In the 1980s, we started printing. Like we separated from the gold standard, and we started like to debase our own currency, right? Then we started to massively deregulate. So the commercial banks and investment banks were no longer needed to be separate entities, right? Thatcher started this all off, and it kicked off this massive like expansion in the financial sector, right? And then Tony Blair came in and Gordon Brown, and normally you'd think Labour government can rein this in a little bit. They said, no, free pass, boys, you go, right? The deregulation that they oversaw is the reason that the economy was crashed in 2007. So we can say it was all great in the early years.
It was a subprime mortgage market.
Yeah. But they oversaw the same policies in the UK as was going on in America. The same bullshit, low interest, money flowing everywhere.
Touted as being somebody who was very solution focused and came up with a lot of good stuff to get us out of it.
No, I'm not saying he didn't. I'm saying that he oversaw the things that led to that crisis and the things that we are still dealing with. Because the economic policy hasn't changed. Our policy to print in money at the Bank of England hasn't changed. In fact, it's only ramped up over the past 13 years.
Yes, but optimism. They also dragged loads of kids out of poverty. They did. The facts all show this. They did. What I'm trying to say is,
did they then thrust them back into poverty by the recession that they oversaw?
Well, I think that was a global. Just don't think you can pin it all on them.
Oh no, I can't say I can't pin it all on them.
And also, it still wasn't anywhere near the kind of economic debt that we're in now and poverty that we're seeing now. Nothing. That we're in Victorian levels now. We've got food bags.
What we're going to see in the next few years is going to get worse.
Yeah, it's really horrendous.
Horrifying. Yeah. Same policies. That's the problem for me.
Yeah, I agree. We could do with a massive revamp. We're back to square one, really. But just, I would take, at the moment, politicians who, make mistakes, don't do everything that I like, also do some good, and are coming at from, we've got this sort of vague idea that running the country is to help people and to affect good change. And even if their plan, fucking hell, I'm no Thatcher fan, but she wasn't giving out contracts to her mates.
No.
She wasn't corrupt. She was reading her briefs, and she caused an immense amount of pain, and she, and wiped out parts of the North. But at least she had an ideology that was based on duty, if you like. I can say that much. And we've just got to get these criminals out. And I don't think I put Starmer in this. I can't put him in the same boat as Boris Johnson. I can't.
I've seen people doing that. I've seen people say he's lying just as much. And like...
Well, I think at the moment he's like Slim Shady. I don't know what he's up to, and I'm going to wait and see when they get in. I've had enough Labour politicians sort of saying that as well. And we don't know what they're saying and the polls and all the bullshit. Come on. Starmer knew Brexit was a disaster. He campaigned to remain. So you know what he thinks on that. So all of this saying that we're not going to align.
I think reversing Brexit would be worse for the country than staying in or staying out even. I think if we went back into the EU...
Well, I don't know if they'd have us back.
Well, no, I don't think they'd have us back. I think it's probably a 7-year process and we'd have to accept the euro and all of the Maastricht Treaty and everything that comes along with it.
I would like to do because I think it'd be funny.
I think that would be the death of this nation. I think that would be the final, like, right now, we're like...
No, did you see the poll that came out today? 86% of young people would like to rejoin, and the demographic, I'm afraid to say, of the very no, I don't think it would be the death of this country at all.
I don't think you can go back on that so soon. I think that the people who felt disenfranchised enough to vote for the first time in years, to vote in the Brexit referendum, many of whom voted to leave, would be so they would despise the entire political and media class forever.
There's a lot of people though who were like, my life can't get worse than this, so stick it to you, and I'm not going to like do what David Cameron says. I absolutely understand that, almost like the establishment, and also, you know, a bit of a protest vote, but their lives haven't improved.
No, but
their lives haven't improved.
The thing that I would say is, like, for me, I don't think that's what it was about at all. It was about, we do not want
pure racism.
Yeah, no, I don't even think race was involved for like 95% of them. I'd be stunned if that was an actual reason. I could be wrong.
Okay, I'm not saying everybody that voted for Brexit is the classic. Of course, not everybody that voted for Brexit.
No, but I think it's a very small minority.
Did vote for Brexit.
I think that's a very small minority of people in the country. I think the reason that I think the thing that Dominic Cummings, for all his corruption and failings, tapped into with that phrase, take back control, was this sense that people have lost control of their lives, that like the decisions that affect the underlying foundations of the country and the world that we live in are like so far away from them that they feel completely hopeless and powerless. And I think the reason for that is probably less to do with the EU and more to do with globalization, right? But I still think that
it was to do with austerity.
Well, yes, 100% as well. However, you could argue that austerity and globalization go hand in hand, because a lot of the places that got hit hardest by austerity are the places that have lost jobs as a result of like the increasing globalization of our economy. And I would say that to them, the point would be, you know, we used to make stuff. Why can't we make stuff again? And everyone thinks that like protectionism is really isolationist. And I'm not so sure that that's always the case. I think it can be a way of insulating your economy from outside shocks. And those shocks are something that I'm also very concerned about, because I think that's the thing that people like Boris Johnson and Michael Gove and Dominic Cummings and all of the disaster capitalists that populate the Conservative Party are waiting for in order to exploit, to push through the policies that we wouldn't otherwise accept.
Yeah.
And I know that was a very long point. Sorry.
Yeah, absolutely. But on the point of rejoining or not, should we? Yes. Will we? No. But I disagree. I think there are so many like people in the fishing industry deeply regret it. Farmers deeply regret it. And yeah, people that would, yes, you're right, it would have gotten to the voting office. And of course, there are still people who are absolutely wedded to it, but it's less and less and less. I get a barometer of this when I go on like live shows. And when I used to go on, oh my God, it was like 50-50. And I would come off and I'd be absolutely abused and absolutely supported. And the callers, I can now go on and say, Brexit is an utter disaster, it's made us poor, and no one phones in. Like, because it has. You're now talking about something tangible. And so I think maybe you might be surprised with the amount of regret. And I've also met people who I really respect, Jenny Jones being one of them. Jenny Jones voted for Brexit, and now she's like, oh my God, what have I done? Because she thought that environmentally it was going to be a good idea, and it's absolutely trashed. I've met other people as well who's like, yeah, no, I regret it. And yeah, so I don't know. I think it might happen sooner then perhaps.
Yeah.
I think. And like we went to, I was just gonna cry.
Oh, man,
We went to.
I don't want the euro like that. That is something that I would.
couldn't give
I
a
would
shit
sit.
what money I
Oh
give over.
no, but that's not what it's about. It's about a sovereign nation having control of their own money supply.
Yes, I know, but we had all of that, and
Yeah.
like we fucked it up, and we were very bloody rude to them.
Well, we
and
were.
I think, yeah, and we had a great deal. We had all these subsidies. We had it great, and we didn't have to take the euro. Well, tough shit, you know. My daughter was looking around universities, and I know it's just like a one tiny little anecdote, but there was this really sweet girl. You know how you like a place because the person that showed you around is nice, and she was just so nice, and she was like studying French. And she was like, yeah, it's a real shame, though, because even a few years ago, you got to go and do all this stuff, and we can't do it now because it's too much of a hassle to sort out with visas. And you just went,
Oh, that's sad.
yeah, it's bollocks. So it's like young people are just like mystified.
Yeah. Just put that a little bit closer.
And
yeah, I mean, I do like the thing that I keep saying to everyone as well. It's just like, look, we can fix these problems. Like, you're right. So that we have. So say you're concerned about environmental deregulation as a result of Brexit.
oh, the shit in the sea.
Yeah, all the shit in the sea. Say you're concerned about consumer or worker protections because Brexit. Say you're concerned about some of the tax evasion that we are going to be continuing to enable, given that we're no longer going to be part of the EU's harmonized like tax zone. There is absolutely nothing within the Constitution of the United Kingdom that stops us doing all of those things while we're out of the European Union. And I think we need to stop thinking about if we were back in and start going, okay, let's try and elect a government that will do these things.
But you see, there isn't any point, because the only Brexit win that you can possibly achieve is going and doing trade with countries that want worse standards. That's it. Sorry.
Yeah.
So actually, that's not going to happen, because we're not going to go, oh no, let's keep these really high standards that the EU insist on. So what? Because then we can't trade with X, Y, and Z, which is our only option.
Then we shouldn't. We just continue to trade with Europe. Like, I mean,
Well, then what the bloody hell was the point of leaving and putting all these barriers in and hampering everything and making everything exhausting and shit for small businesses and less environmentally friendly? It's just bollocks.
Yeah.
It's just bollocks. Sorry, there's no argument anymore about Brexit. And people
Well,
go sovereign. I think,
say,
oh, what does
yeah.
that mean?
Well,
like,
I mean, I would say that the sovereignty argument, especially in the long run, is quite powerful.
I think it's weak as anything. Honestly, I really genuinely
That's because
think
you
it's
agree
weak.
with the current
No.
policies of the European Union.
No,
what if they suddenly turned around and were like, no, actually, you can't have regulation on that.
Because no, it's not. Let me explain. Sovereign on trading standards. Who cares? Who does that affect on a day-to-day basis? Nobody. What affects a person who lives in a country is what the education is like. That was a British education system. That was not dictated to by the EU. It's what is your culture like? That's not dictated to by the EU. What's the sense of humour like? Not dictated. Your health system, whether you have a library at the end of your bloody street, and what your transport's like. None of those things actually, when you wake up in the morning as a Brit, morning, put on the telly, get your cup of tea, walk down the road and go to work. Nothing in terms of, oh, my food has to be X and my water has to be X affects my day. Sovereign bullshit. Sorry.
Yeah, but again, no, I mean, like, you make a good point, but I don't think I'm going to be swayed by the idea that, because, right, put it this way. As the EU currently exists, they're attempting to make laws for 27 different countries, right? With massive disparity in culture and economics. Yeah. Go to places in Eastern Europe that have suffered monstrously as a result of the brain drain that's happened. All of the smart, ambitious people have left. That's like a really bad, seriously go and speak to some people who like currently still live in like some of the Eastern European nations who have lost a lot of people to the richer Northern European nations, right? some people have described it as a miniature form of colonialism. I think that's maybe a bit much, but like the point they're making is that like
no, because we didn't go and take them. They chose
to leave.
As an individual to go and spread their wings. Okay, and I personally think anybody has a right to move around as well. That's all tied up into this refugee thing. I hate it. And the other argument was always about, it's absolutely disgusting that we use Eastern Europeans to come and pick our fruit. Yeah. We should be doing that. And I'd be like, no, that's an opportunity for them that they actually wanted to do. They chose to do it, and it was good for them financially. So they come over, they're good at it as well, just built differently, very strong. And they were fast and brilliant at it. And then they took that money home. They can't do that now. Yeah. This idea that like,
that money is then leaving, but that money is leaving our economy. Sorry. So that's actually,
Yeah, but now we can't get anybody to do it.
Yeah, I mean, that's
and nobody's got any money. But so like it just fries my brain.
The issue is that like, because they're trying to make laws across like 27 different countries with massive disparities in income and massive differences in like economics and culture, that they're in this weird middle ground where they're not powerful enough to properly harmonize things to make it effective, but the block that they're trying to legislate for is too large and too diffuse. So what's going to happen, especially if you listen to people like Jean-Claude Juncker or like any of the big pro-European people who are deeply involved in the EU or like within the project at least, they're like, we need to have further expansion of powers and further harmonization, right? In order for it to work. And I think that's probably like the way it's going to end up going. It'll end up as like some sort of United States of Europe, or at least that in some sense, right? Fair enough. That's where they want to go. I'm not sure that's a great thing for us to be wrapped up in. Like, I don't see there's.
It's all so hypothetical, and also it's like
but that's not. It's not hypothetical when that's the way that they
tea
say.
And like eating scones or whatever. We're not going to be eating.
It's not that. Like, it's not that at all.
Okay, so firstly, we don't know if that's actually going to ever happen.
Well, I mean, it has been like since the conception of the EU, the entire trend has been towards like more power and a larger bloc.
But we had a say in it and always tempered everything. And also this idea that
but lots of different countries making. So like for instance, continued to happen anyway.
The European Directive on Water, like our beach is really clean. Like it was good. Yeah. It was great, brilliant. Now they're full of shit. And so it's
taking away our responsibility as citizens of this nation to elect people who will fix the fucking problem. Right? If we rely upon a greater superstructure to fix our problems for us, then we will never deal with them ourselves.
Okay, so yes, perhaps. But again, we're in fantasy land here. The people that sold us down the river for it never had our best intentions at heart. They weren't saying, let's leave the EU and keep standards really, really high, but, in fact, let's make them even better. Like we all know that was never the point. And actually, I've also felt as well that this, okay, I am not saying the EU is perfect. Of course, it's bloated. There's bureaucracy. There's corruption within it. Of course, I'm not stupid. It's not as perfect a deal. But what are we trading with China? Great. There's lots of stuff about
more of our own
Americans
stuff
here. Again, that would be ideal. But I can't see that happening anytime particularly soon. But also, the good thing about 27 nations all tempering each other is that you can't have one rogue country going batshit. They're all going to temper each other, which is what happened. So actually, broadly speaking,
you also get more homogenization, and I'm also particularly scared of the idea of monopolies. I like when lots of different places have the opportunity to do things differently.
But we do on the important stuff. I never ever woke up and thought, today I feel a bit French. Ever. Or Romanian. Today,
maybe a little Italian.
Bloody EU. I've just been eating Romanian biscuits all afternoon. Can't get my McVitie's anymore. It's just, we've always had our national identity, like, so strong.
100%. I don't think that's going to disappear as a result of being in the EU or not. For me, it's about...
It's just a trading bloc.
Yeah, it is a trading bloc. Yeah. But it's a trading bloc that continues to expand its powers. And that's the point. It's like, if like you're saying these things that make us like quintessentially British, like the important things to the system that the EU didn't have like a say in. What if they suddenly do?
Oh, they won't.
Yeah, but like I said, like
we would have thrown our toys out the pram and said no.
But all of them, like the major players within the European Commission, within the European Union, all the former presidents, they all foresee this expansion of its powers. And that has been, like, if you can show me one example where they've gone, actually, we need to rein that in, then I would agree with you. But there isn't an example of that. And I wouldn't have made any of these arguments pre-Brexit. The point that I'm trying to make is that so long as we're stuck saying that this is our problem, we won't fix it when it's in front of us. We won't fix the problems while the way to fix it is some fantasy land that we don't live in, where we're still in the European Union.
I don't know. I think we want, like, you want a whole reform and sort of start from ground zero. I just know that that's not going to happen in my lifetime. So I just want someone to come in and run things in a fairly sensible way. I would take that at the moment.
Yeah. Well, I mean, my fear is that we are on the precipice of collapse in many senses, and that unless we get that reform, that's going to come, unless we get it before things completely fall to pieces, we're going to end up with things falling to pieces, and then we have to rebuild. And the problem is with that is, like, do you know who ends up in charge of that every single time? It's the crazy people. It's never the sensible, oh, well, maybe we should do this, or maybe this would be good for the people. No, it's the ones with the manifestos already written. Like, I don't like that scenario. So I will continue to argue for reform before we get there.
I've had arguments with a friend particularly who was, still grieving Corbyn, if you like, and he's like, no, I'd rather the Tories got in again and made everything so shit that then something new has to be born. And I'm just like, yeah, you don't have kids.
No, I don't want that. That's what I specifically don't want. I hope and continue to argue that we can find something better. Hopefully.
Please. Can't be worse.
Yeah, well.
That should be their slogan. Can't be worse.
Yeah, how much worse could we be? Like, that would be a good political campaign.
Yeah.
So how do you think the local elections are going to play out?
Yeah, I hope they get a pasting. I really do, because then Sunak might have to stop, smarmy little shit, and have a think, and maybe get rid of Suella Braverman or something, because, yeah, who is he trying to please at this point? So I really hope. When did the results start coming in?
I'm not sure. We can have a look, actually. Why don't we do that?
Because we've been in Purdah all day, haven't we?
Yeah. BBC News, probably. Let's go for that. Oh, yeah, the Kremlin drone attack. Do you think that was really Ukraine?
I know.
So hard to tell these days with all of that entire war. Every single thing I see, I'm like, is this real?
I know. We are living in dystopia, really, aren't we?
Yeah.
Well, also,
The worst bit was
I was
fucking
really
Boris
naive.
Johnson stepped in to stop the peace negotiations. Seriously, flew to fucking, like, it was, I don't know, it must have been like 6 months ago now. Okay.
Yeah, he went over and told Ukraine they should join the EU.
Yeah, I mean, but they're trying to get Ukraine to join NATO. I think it's the most insane thing in the world. Russia repeatedly said, this is our red line. And we're like, okay, lads, let's go. And, like, way to make things worse.
But it's okay, because if we all get annihilated, we're going to get a beep on our phone.
Exactly.
So we're fine.
Actually,
Except mine didn't work.
I turned off my emergency notifications. So I was like, I wonder, can I just not have this happen to me?
Yeah.
So the polls, polling data, the BBC News not reporting the election campaigns until polls close at 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
So I guess 10 o'clock, then we'll start getting things rolling in from then. Normally it's about an hour or two, and then we start getting results. So you'll probably not know till tomorrow morning, really.
The thing I'd be really interested in knowing is if you could find a way of finding out the percentage of people in the country that know more than what they're fed on the 6 o'clock news about politics.
What do you reckon?
I don't know. I feel like I'm too caught up in it to have any idea anymore. And because my kids hear it by osmosis, they know who all the cabinet are and everything, because they hear LBC on in the kitchen, or they listen to my podcast in the car, or like whatever. So I don't know, but sometimes I am stunned. And it's usually when like when I'm out and about or something, and I just think, oh, okay, wow. Like, so my sister went on a date with a guy, and she was like, oh, he was quite nice, but there was a red line. I was like, well, she didn't know who the leader of the opposition was. And And she was like, but he was like quite bright, he was nice. And she went, but I think that's a red line, isn't it? And I was like, well, I think so, yeah. And then I was like, is it? And I was like, I kind of think it is. And she said, I think it is. She said, I feel like that's a level of ignorance too far. She's 30, she's like, you're much younger than me, 32 or something.
Yeah.
I was like, I think anyway, she didn't see him again.
Is that a prerequisite, do you think? Would that be for you?
Oh, yeah, I think for me, probably why I'm permanently single, but yeah. And I also think I just need to be with someone like-minded. Like, I couldn't date a Tory at this stage. I couldn't. I'd fundamentally dislike them. Mm. If they were saying, oh, Swallow Brogan's amazing, like, I'm not going to get on with them. I'm just not.
Is anyone saying that?
Well, it must be
Apart
someone.
from that tiny portion of racists that we talked about.
I could handle if I really liked somebody, if they said, oh, yeah, I voted Johnson, but I regret it now. I can see him for what he is now. I could probably just about get there. But no, if anyone was like pro Sunak, I'd be like, oh.
Yeah, I don't know if anyone's actually pro Sunak. Boris was definitely more popular. No. To be fair, interestingly, I thought the most admirable politician during the pandemic was a Tory. It was Sir Charles Walker, because he was the only one that I saw point out the disparities in education for kids who were learning at home. He was like, there are people with 4 kids and 1 laptop in a single flat. Like, how on earth, like, we're leaving these children behind.
Yeah, and trying to get laptops to
yeah. And he was the only one I heard saying anything about it. And I was like, do you know what, man? That is a guy for whom I have respect. Yeah. Because he seemed to actually care.
Yeah, and have worked that out. Absolutely. Yeah, I really felt sorry for the kids.
Yeah.
I did. Because actually mine were very good about it during. They really were. They just sort of sucked it up. But my daughter says now, with hindsight, she was being good and going through the motions, but she said she was really like depressed. I was like, oh. And of course I was trying to like keep everything going. So you turn into like, as a mum, you're like a Butlins redcoat. You're like, everybody okay? Do you want to do a bit of Joe Wicks? No. And you're thinking, I don't either. I also just want to go, But someone's got to be like that person. What should we have for dinner? Eggs? Yeah. Oh God, it was shit. But yeah, and then them coming out of the pandemic. By the way, like when lockdown first started, I was like, yeah, we've got to do it, because we didn't know what we were playing at. And my mum lives in Italy, near where the hospitals were just completely overwhelmed.
Lombardo? Was it Lombardo?
Really scary, yeah. And I was getting the news from her going, Jesus, like, what is this? And we were merrily sending people off to ski trips there and everything. Just like,
I was in Austria.
Government doing nothing. I was like, oh, okay. So during the bit when we didn't know what the hell was going on, I was like, yeah, like in case loads of people die, we should do that. Because the other day I was retweeting something about how I believe that this current cohort of kids taking their exams should have a bit of leeway, rather than they're the first year where they're like, no, and they've had no leeway made for the fact they had 2 years at home. And which has been desperate. And someone was like slagging me off on Twitter going, but you supported lockdown, you this or that. And I thought, yeah, I did at the beginning. And I can also feel that the kids need a bit of leeway. Like,
yeah, but I mean, like for those people, it's just like, what? So you'd rather in hindsight that someone didn't realize the consequences of something they'd supported, instead of saying, there's something happened here that we need to fix. Like, shit, like, I don't get that people.
I don't get it either.
Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah. And also it's like, don't worry, I hated lockdown. Like, it was shit. It was really miserable. My kids were really miserable, but I also was a bit worried about people dying. Yeah. And I'm not a scientist. So like, needed to see what was going to happen. And also didn't really want to be the person who was like, we're all locking down, but you teachers, get in there.
Yeah.
You've got to do this.
Yeah.
It's like a bit of compassion for people. Unbelievable. Anyway, there you go. But yes.
Yeah. Anyway, we have blasted to an hour. Wow. So is there anything you would like to plug? Any wild, outlandish predictions you'd like to make? Anything really controversial you'd like to say so I get plenty of hate clicks?
Oh God, no! I'm not a very clickbaity person.
This is why the podcast doesn't get as many views as it could. I'm the same.
It's just not very clickbaity, but I would say give the Trawl a listen. It's a lot of fun. We go through social media and look at all the clips and look at what everybody else is saying about them, which provides a lot of comedy. And I would say just get the fucking Tories out, please. Just vote for whomever whoever is in your area, can we please just have a refresh? As and when the Tories are out, Marina and I have already decided we're going to do election night together. There's nobody else I'd want to do election night with. This is Marina Purkiss, who I do the podcast with. And it's going to be a long, boozy night. And if the Tories are out, you'll hear the screams from wherever you are.
That's a very good point, actually. Might have to organise a live stream that night. That'll be fun.
We are going to go absolutely. Listen, I want to see them.
We'll Skype you guys in.
Topple. I want to see them topple one by one.
Yeah.
Lose their seats. So much joy. I want Mog to lose his seat.
Oh, I want Boris to lose that seat in
I
Uxbridge.
want Boris Johnson to lose his seat. I'm the only person who I've never called him just Boris. I've always had this thing. I always call him Boris Johnson. Ugh.
No, you're just right. It's too familiar.
Yeah, and it's something he really fashioned, isn't it? Yeah. Horrible man.
Yeah, it feels like we all know him. That's why it's Boris. Oof. Which is ridiculous. Anyway, fantastic place to finish things. So yeah, everybody, Jemma Forte, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Hey everyone, thanks for making it right the way to the end of the podcast. I love that you tuned in this long. Do me a favor, hit subscribe, because 80% of you bastards are not subscribing, but you're watching my videos. See you next time.